On a chilly autumn evening, four college friends, Megan, Brian, Laura, and Kevin, stand before the old decrepit house at the edge of town. The house, abandoned for years, is known for its dark past. Kevin challenges the group to spend the night inside. With nervous laughter and a sense of adventure, they agree and push open the creaky gate. The front door groans as it swings open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Dust motes dance in the beams of their flashlights. The smell of mold and decay fills the air. They step inside, the floorboards creaking under their feet, and the door slams shut behind them with a deafening bang. They make their way to the living room, where an old grand piano stands covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Brian lifts a sheet to reveal a mirror, and they see a fleeting reflection of a shadowy figure behind them. A cold breeze brushes past them, and they hear a whispering sound, faint but unmistakable. Laura shivers and clutches Brian's arm. They decide to explore further, moving cautiously towards the source of the whispering. In the kitchen, they find old, rusted appliances and broken dishes scattered on the floor. The whispering grows louder, and they see a ghostly figure of a woman in tattered clothes standing by the stove. She disappears as quickly as she appeared, leaving them shaken. They discover a door leading to the basement. Kevin suggests going down, but Megan hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky stairs, their flashlights barely cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and an oppressive feeling surrounds them. In the basement, they find an old wooden table with strange symbols carved into it. A low growling noise fills the room, and they see glowing eyes staring at them from the shadows. Panic sets in, and they scramble back up the stairs, the door slamming shut behind them. Breathless and terrified, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally bursting out into the cool night air. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, catching their breath. The house looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the memories of what they saw and heard. The night air is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety. Back in their dorms, the friends try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly woman and the glowing eyes in the basement. The whispers still echo in their minds, reminding them that some horrors can never be forgotten.
Lena, Mark, and Sarah arrived at Ravenwood House, an old, decrepit mansion that had been abandoned for years. The house stood at the end of a lonely road, surrounded by thick, twisted trees. They were there to investigate the rumored hauntings for their paranormal blog. "This place is giving me chills already," Sarah whispered, hugging her coat tighter. "Perfect for our blog," Mark replied, setting up his camera. "Let's capture some real scares." Lena pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. "Let's go in and set up. The sooner we start, the sooner we can leave." Inside, the house was dark and filled with the smell of mold and dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture was scattered about. As they explored, they found old portraits on the walls, books with yellowed pages, and broken trinkets. "Look at this," Mark said, picking up a dusty photograph of a family. "They must have lived here a long time ago." Lena shivered. "It feels like they're still watching us." Sarah glanced nervously at the dark corners. "Let's just get the footage and get out of here." Lena found an old leather-bound journal on a table covered in dust. She opened it carefully and started reading aloud. The journal belonged to the house's previous owner, detailing strange occurrences and sightings of a ghostly figure. "Listen to this," Lena said, her voice trembling. "The owner saw a woman in white every night standing by the window." Sarah hugged herself. "That's creepy. What happened to them?" Lena turned the pages. "It just stops. No explanation." Mark filmed Lena reading. "This is exactly what we need. Keep going." As they continued exploring, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. They saw a figure in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. The figure's face was obscured by shadows, but they could feel its eyes on them. "Do you see that?" Mark whispered, his camera shaking. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "Let's get out of here." The figure started moving towards them. They ran, slamming a door behind them. We have to leave, Sarah insisted, her eyes wide with fear. Not yet, Lena said, determined. We need to find out what's really happening here. Lena found another entry in the journal that described a ritual to banish the spirit. They needed to gather candles, salt, and a mirror. The tension was palpable as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return any moment. Are you sure this will work? Mark asked, placing candles around the room. It has to, Lena replied, pouring salt in a circle. We don't have any other choice. Sarah held the mirror, her hands shaking. Just hurry. As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier created by the salt circle. Lena chanted the incantation from the journal, her voice growing stronger with each word. Keep it away from us, Sarah shouted, clutching the mirror tightly. We're almost there, Lena yelled, her focus unbroken. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With a final, desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. They collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. We did it, Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. Let's get out of here, Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their equipment and left the house, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. Let's never do this again, Mark said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the house, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The house behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. Let's make a pact, Lena said, stopping to look at her friends. We never speak of this again. Agreed, Mark and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, leaving the haunted Ravenwood house behind, grateful to have survived their night of terror. It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter Lily arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. Wow, this place is huge, Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work. Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. Let's get inside before it gets too dark. Inside, the manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. This place is like a maze, Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. Look at this, she said, flipping through the pages. It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. What do these mean? That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. Mom! Dad! She screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. What is it, Lily? Tom asked. There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow, Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of. The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. We need to find that mirror, Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. Let's go to the attic. Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror, covered with a dusty cloth. This must be it, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. This is it. This is what's causing everything. Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. We need to destroy it. But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. We need to get out of here, Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. We need to perform a ritual, Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. It's the only way to banish the spirits. Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. Let's do this. We have no other choice. They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. Keep going, Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. We're almost there. Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. No, we can't stop now, Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. It's over, Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. We did it, Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. Let's never speak of this place again. Tom agreed. We need to move on with our lives. As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. Tom, it's not over, she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home.
Ravenwood Manor, a looming Gothic structure, dominates the landscape with its ominous presence. The setting sun bathes its darkened facade in a blood-red glow, as if warning all who dare approach of the secrets it holds within. The entrance to Ravenwood Manor is marked by ornate iron gates, their twisted designs speaking of a forgotten era. Vines snake their way around the cold metal, as if nature itself is reclaiming the estate from the hands of man. Within the sprawling grounds of Ravenwood Manor, darkness reigns supreme. Overgrown hedges and wilted flowers lend an air of neglect to the once grand estate. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows upon the unkempt landscape. In the backyard of Ravenwood Manor, twisted paths wind their way through a maze of gnarled trees. At the center stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and mystery, beckoning those brave enough to uncover its secrets. Adjacent to Ravenwood Manor lies an overgrown cemetery, its weathered tombstones peeking through the tangled undergrowth like silent sentinels of the past. Wisps of fog cling to the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the forgotten burial ground. Within the entrance hall of Ravenwood Manor, flickering candlelight casts long shadows upon the grand staircase. Tattered portraits line the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow every move of those who dare to enter. In the dining room of Ravenwood Manor, a long table is set for an abandoned feast, its once luxurious settings now covered in dust and cobwebs. The chandelier above hangs low, its light obscured by the thick layer of neglect that pervades the room. Within the library of Ravenwood Manor, dusty shelves stretch as far as the eye can see, laden with forgotten tomes and ancient manuscripts. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of centuries of knowledge. In the bedroom of Ravenwood Manor, the once grand canopy bed now sags under the weight of time, its tattered curtains billowing in the wind like ghosts of the past. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper, as if the very walls themselves are haunted by the memories of those who once slept within. As dawn breaks, the front steps of Ravenwood Manor are bathed in the soft light of
Emily and her brother Jack inherit an old mansion from their estranged uncle. The house, nestled deep in the woods, is grand but eerily quiet. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate key in a dusty drawer. She keeps it, wondering what it might unlock. That night, Emily wakes up to the sound of whispers and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as her imagination. When she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing under a tree in the garden. She calls Jack, but the figure is gone when he arrives. The next day, Emily and Jack search for what the key might unlock. They find a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the study. The key fits perfectly, revealing a small room filled with old books, an antique mirror, and a diary. Emily reads the diary and learns it belonged to a woman named Margaret who lived in the mansion years ago. Margaret wrote about seeing a ghostly figure and hearing whispers. Her last entry hints at a hidden treasure in the house. That night, Emily sees the ghostly figure in the mirror. The figure, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, looks sad and mouths the words, "Help me." Terrified, Emily tells Jack, who becomes determined to help her. Emily and Jack search the house for clues about Margaret's hidden treasure. They find a series of letters behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The letters reveal that Margaret's child was taken from her, and she hid a valuable locket somewhere in the house to protect it. As they continue their search, the ghost becomes more active, appearing more frequently and growing more desperate. Emily and Jack follow clues to the attic, where they find a locked chest. The key fits perfectly. Inside the chest, they find Margaret's locket, along with a letter explaining her tragic story. Margaret's spirit appears, looking peaceful. She thanks them silently before fading away, her spirit finally at rest. With Margaret's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter. The whispers and apparitions stop. Emily and Jack decide to stay and restore the mansion, feeling a connection to its history and to Margaret. Months later, Emily and Jack enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Margaret and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The mansion is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way.
In the heart of a dense forest stood an old forgotten asylum. It had been abandoned for decades, its history buried under layers of dust and overgrown vines. The locals believed it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. However, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Sarah, decided to explore it after hearing the eerie tales. "Are we really doing this, when Lisa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Of course," Jake replied, leading the way. "It's just an old building." As they approached the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence surrounded them. Inside, the asylum was even more ominous. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was covered in debris. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Ben said, his flashlight illuminating the dark corridors. "Just stick together," Jake said, trying to sound brave. "We'll be fine." As they moved deeper into the asylum, they heard faint whispers and distant footsteps, though they were the only ones there. Or so they thought. While exploring a particularly dark hallway, Lisa suddenly screamed. "Did you see that?" She pointed towards a shadowy figure that disappeared around the corner. "What did you see?" Jake asked, rushing to her side. "A person, or something that looked like one," Lisa replied, shaking. "Let's check it out," Ben suggested, though his voice was shaky. They cautiously followed, but the figure was gone. Instead, they found an old, rusted wheelchair with fresh scratch marks on the floor. In one of the rooms, they found old patient records and disturbing photos. The files detailed horrific experiments conducted on the patients. "This is sick," Sarah said, flipping through the documents. "No wonder this place is abandoned." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The friends rushed to open it, but it was stuck. The room grew colder, and they heard a low, guttural growl. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, panic setting in. They managed to pry the door open and fled down the corridor. The whispers grew louder, and they could feel a presence following them. Sarah looked back and saw shadowy figures closing in. "Run!" she screamed. They raced through the maze-like hallways, trying to find an exit. The spirits of the asylum's past residents seemed to be everywhere, their wails echoing through the walls. "We're not alone," Ben panted, fear evident in his voice. The group stumbled upon a chapel within the asylum, its stained glass windows cracked but still intact. The room had an eerie calmness, and the spirits seemed to avoid it. "Maybe we can hide here," Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. They barricaded the doors and huddled together, trying to catch their breath. As they sat in the dim light of their flashlights, they noticed a hidden door behind the altar. "Should we check it out?" Jake asked. "We don't have a choice," Ben replied. They opened the hidden door and found a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement. The air grew colder as they descended. The basement was filled with old medical equipment and cages. "This must be where they conducted their experiments," Sarah whispered. As they explored, they found a large, iron-bound book, filled with incantations and rituals. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "We need to destroy this," Jake said. "It might be the source of the curse." With the book in hand, they returned to the chapel. They decided to perform a ritual to break the curse. As they began chanting from the book, the spirits became more aggressive, banging on the doors and windows. "Keep going," Alex shouted. The room shook, and the spirits' wails grew louder. Just as it seemed the spirits would break through, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the spirits screamed one final time before vanishing. "It's over," Emily whispered, dropping the book. The spirits gone, the friends made their way out of the asylum. The building seemed less menacing now, the air lighter. "We made it," Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. As they reached the forest edge, they turned back to see the asylum one last time. It stood silently, as if the horrors within had finally been laid to rest. "We should go," Ben said, "and never speak of this place again." Back in town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends promised each other to never speak of the asylum again. However, the memories of that night lingered. A few weeks later, Sarah received a package. Inside was another iron-bound book, similar to the one they had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Her heart raced as she realized the curse might not be broken after all. Asterisk. It was a dark and stormy night. Sarah and her friends, Mike and Lucy, decided to take a shortcut through the old haunted woods to get home faster. They had heard the stories about the woods, but they didn't believe in ghosts. Asterisk, asterisk. As they entered the woods, the wind howled through the trees, and shadows danced in the dim light of their flashlights. The path was narrow and overgrown, making it difficult to walk. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from the darkness. It sounded like whispering, but they couldn't understand the words. Sarah suggested they keep moving, but Mike wanted to check it out. They came across an old abandoned cabin. The windows were broken, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine as they approached it. Inside the cabin, the air was cold and damp. Cobwebs covered the corners, and the floor creaked with every step. They found old furniture and strange symbols carved into the walls. Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Terrified, they ran out of the cabin and back into the woods. The ghostly woman seemed to follow them, her whispers growing louder and more desperate. They could feel her cold presence right behind them. In their panic, they lost the path and found themselves deeper in the woods. The trees seemed to close in on them, and the whispers of the ghostly woman echoed around them. Just when they thought they were lost forever, they saw a faint light in the distance. They followed it and found themselves at the edge of the woods, the ghostly whispers fading away. They finally made it out of the woods, panting and scared, but safe. They vowed never to take that shortcut again and hurried home, the haunting experience etched in their memories forever. As the sun sets behind the distant mountains, a weary traveler pulls up to the entrance of an old rundown hotel. The building looms ominously against the darkening sky, its windows boarded up and its paint peeling. Ignoring the sense of foreboding that tugs at their mind, the traveler steps out of the car, their footsteps echoing on the cracked pavement. Inside the hotel, the traveler is greeted by the receptionist, a gaunt, pale figure with hollow eyes and a forced smile. They hand over their ID and credit card, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in their stomach as the receptionist hands them a rusty key and points them towards the stairs. With a nervous glance around the lobby, the traveler heads off to find their room. As the traveler makes their way down the dimly lit hallway towards their room, they can't shake the feeling of being watched. The floorboards creak beneath their feet, and shadows dance along the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. They quicken their pace, their heart pounding in their chest as they reach their destination. As the traveler settles into their room, they're startled by a sudden chill that fills the air. They turn to see a ghostly figure standing in the corner, a woman dressed in Victorian-era clothing, her eyes hollow and her expression mournful. The traveler's blood runs cold as they realize they're not alone in the room. As the night wears on, the hotel comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, lights flicker and dim, and strange noises echo through the hallways. The traveler huddles in their room, their heart racing as they listen to the unsettling sounds that fill the air. In the dead of night, the traveler is awoken by a sudden chill that fills the room. They sit up in bed, their eyes wide with fear as they realize they're not alone. Standing at the foot of the bed is the ghostly apparition from before, her eyes fixed on the traveler with an intensity that sends shivers down their spine. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the traveler makes a desperate bid for escape. They leap out of bed and race towards the door, their heart pounding in their chest as they flee down the haunted hallways. Behind them, they can hear the ghostly apparition's mournful wail, urging them to stay. As the traveler bursts out into the cool night air, they're greeted by the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They pause for a moment, their breath coming in ragged gasps as they take in the beauty of the sunrise. With one last glance back at the haunted hotel, they turn and walk away, knowing they'll never forget the terror they experienced within its walls.
Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a strained relationship with his family, receives a letter informing him of an inheritance from his late uncle. The inheritance includes a remote mansion in the countryside. Curious and financially strained, Jonathan decides to visit the mansion with his wife, Laura, and their teenage daughter, Megan. Laura looks worried. "Are you sure about this? We don't even know much about your uncle." Jonathan nods. "We need a fresh start, and maybe this place can offer that." Megan, always the adventurous one, says excitedly, "It'll be like an adventure." The family arrives at the mansion late in the afternoon. The mansion stands tall and imposing, surrounded by a dense forest. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere is eerily quiet. Megan shivers. This place feels off. Jonathan, trying to be positive, says, "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Laura clutches Megan's hand. "Stay close, honey." Inside, the mansion is filled with dust and cobwebs. The furniture is covered with white sheets, and the air is musty. As they explore, Megan finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. The mirror's surface is strangely clean compared to the rest of the house. "Look at this mirror," Megan calls out. Laura touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but out of place here." Jonathan frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Jonathan and Laura fall asleep quickly, but Megan struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Megan runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Jonathan, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Megan. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the mansion. They discover that it was owned by Jonathan's uncle, who was a reclusive and eccentric man interested in the occult. Laura reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Mansion believed to be haunted. Jonathan sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Megan, still shaken, adds, What if the spirits are still here? Back at the mansion, Jonathan discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large locked chest. Laura examines a book. He was really into dark stuff. This can't be good. Jonathan tries to open the chest, but fails. We need to find the key. There might be answers inside. Megan points to a strange symbol on the wall. I've seen this symbol before, in my room. That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Megan is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Laura sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. We have to leave now, Laura screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Jonathan grabs an old book from the study. This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual. Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Jonathan reads the incantation aloud, while Laura and Megan hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. Keep going, Jonathan! Laura yells over the noise. With a final shout, Jonathan completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. We should tell someone about this place, Laura says, looking back at the mansion. Jonathan nods. Let's make sure no one else has to go through this. They drive away, leaving the mansion behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Megan finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the mansion. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. We are not done, it reads. Megan turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness. In a remote village nestled deep within a dense forest, a young couple, Emma and Jack, arrived at an old cabin they had rented for a weekend getaway. As they approached the cabin, the trees seemed to close in around them, casting long shadows that danced in the fading light. Despite the eerie atmosphere, Emma and Jack were excited for their adventure. Inside the cabin, the air was musty, and the furniture showed signs of age and neglect. Despite its rustic charm, there was an unsettling aura that permeated the space. Emma tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but Jack couldn't help but notice the strange symbols etched into the walls. As night fell, Emma and Jack decided to take a walk through the surrounding woods. The forest seemed to come alive with strange whispers that echoed through the trees, sending shivers down their spines. Despite their growing unease, they pressed on, drawn deeper into the darkness by an unseen force. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Emma and Jack began to see strange shadows flitting among the trees. The shapes seemed to twist and contort, taking on sinister forms that sent chills down their spines. Jack suggested they turn back, but Emma's curiosity got the better of her, and they pressed on. As they walked, the trees seemed to close in around them, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Emma's heart raced as she felt a growing sense of dread settle over her. Jack tried to reassure her, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly they stumbled upon a clearing, and before them stood a group of ghostly figures. Their pale faces were twisted in agony, and their eyes seemed to bore into Emma and Jack's souls. Frozen with fear, they watched as the apparitions floated closer, their whispers growing louder with each passing moment. With a cry, Emma and Jack turned and ran, their hearts pounding in their chests as they fled through the forest. The ghostly figures pursued them with relentless determination, their whispers echoing in their ears. Desperate for escape, they pushed themselves to their limits, praying for a way out of the nightmare. Finally, they burst out of the woods and into the clearing where the cabin stood. Gasping for breath, they collapsed on the ground, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, they knew they had escaped the forest's clutches, but the memory of their terrifying ordeal would haunt them forever.
In a secluded forest, shrouded in mist, lies an ancient mansion rumored to be haunted. A group of friends, Emma, Mark, and Sarah, venture into the forest one chilly evening, drawn by the allure of the mansion's dark history. As they approach the mansion, they are greeted by an imposing wrought iron gate, its hinges creaking ominously in the chilly night air. The mansion looms before them, its grandeur faded and its windows like empty eyes staring out into the darkness. Inside the mansion, the air is thick with dust and the sound of creaking floorboards echoes through the empty halls. The friends explore room after room, their footsteps muffled by faded carpets and their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. As they delve deeper into the mansion, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten rooms filled with cobweb-covered furniture, secret passages hidden behind crumbling walls, and faded portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls and shadows deepen, the mansion comes alive with strange noises and eerie whispers. The friends feel a presence lurking in the darkness, unseen but unmistakably malevolent, its icy fingers brushing against their skin like the chill of a grave. In a desperate bid to escape the mansion's grasp, the friends race through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the mansion seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze from which there may be no escape. Cornered in the mansion's dark heart, the friends confront the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night. Emily, a young historian, inherits the infamous Blackwood Mansion from her estranged great-uncle. Accompanied by her friends Jack and Lucy, she arrives on a stormy evening, the rain pouring down as they make their way through the overgrown driveway. The mansion looms before them, dark and foreboding. "Are you sure about this, Emily?" Jack asks, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. "We need to know what he left behind," Emily replies, gripping the ancient key tightly. Inside, the mansion is a maze of dusty rooms and forgotten relics. The grand staircase is adorned with cobwebs, and the air smells of mildew and decay. They split up to explore, flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. "This place is a historian's dream," Emily says, opening an old book. Lucy shivers. "More like a nightmare." Jack finds a locked door in the basement. "Hey, I think I found something." After breaking the lock, they enter a hidden room filled with strange artifacts and occult symbols. In the center, there's an altar with a dusty old book and a glowing amulet. "This must be where he performed his rituals," Jack says, examining the symbols. Emily picks up the amulet. "Look at this. It's beautiful." Lucy steps back uneasy. "I don't like this place. We should leave." That night, they decide to stay in the mansion. As they settle in, strange things begin to happen. Doors creak and whispering voices echo through the halls. Emily is awakened by the sound of footsteps in her room. "Who's there?" she whispers, clutching the amulet. A shadowy figure moves in the corner, vanishing when she turns on the light. The next day, Emily and her friends delve into the old book they found. It reveals a dark history of the Blackwood family, including a curse that promises eternal torment to anyone who disturbs the amulet. "This explains the strange occurrences," Emily says, her voice shaking. "We need to put the amulet back." "But where does it go?" Jack asks. The book mentions a secret crypt beneath the mansion. They find the entrance to the crypt hidden beneath a trapdoor in the basement. The air is cold and damp as they descend the stone steps. The crypt is filled with ancient tombs and eerie statues. "This place gives me the creeps," Lucy says, her voice echoing. Emily finds a pedestal with an indentation matching the amulet. "This must be it." As she places the amulet on the pedestal, the ground shakes, and a ghostly figure appears, screaming in rage. That night, the mansion becomes a nightmare. Ghostly apparitions roam the halls and objects move on their own. The friends are terrorized by relentless hauntings. They gather in the living room, trying to come up with a plan. "We need to banish the spirits," Emily says, holding the book of spells. Jack nods. "Let's do it together." They begin the ritual, their voices shaky but determined. As they recite the banishment spell, the apparitions grow more aggressive. The temperature drops and a fierce wind blows through the mansion. The dark figure from before reappears, trying to stop them. "Keep going!" Emily shouts over the chaos. With a final shout, they complete the ritual. The figure screams and dissolves into mist. The wind dies down, and the mansion falls silent. "We did it," Lucy whispers, tears of relief in her eyes. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The friends prepare to leave, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "We should document everything," Emily says, looking back at the mansion one last time. Jack nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They lock the doors and drive away, leaving Blackwood Mansion and its dark history behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old amulet on her bedside table, even though she left it in the crypt. Her heart races as she picks it up, and the room grows cold. A whispering voice fills the room. "You cannot escape the curse." Emily turns to see the dark figure standing behind her, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
Michael, a man in his late 30s, receives a surprising letter. His great-uncle, whom he barely knew, has passed away, leaving him an old manor in the remote countryside. Intrigued and financially struggling, Michael decides to visit the manor with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emily. Michael reads the letter aloud. It says we have inherited an estate. Sarah looks at him skeptically. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Michael nods. "We could use a fresh start. Besides, what harm could it do?" Emily, always up for an adventure, adds, "It sounds exciting. Let's go." The family arrives at the manor in the late afternoon. The mansion is grand but clearly neglected, surrounded by overgrown gardens and tall, dense trees. The sky is overcast, casting a gloomy shadow over the scene. Emily shivers. "This place gives me the creeps." Michael tries to be optimistic. "It's just old. We can fix it up." Sarah clutches Emily's hand. "Let's stay close and see what's inside." Inside, the manor is filled with dust, cobwebs, and a musty smell. The furniture is covered with white sheets. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. Unlike the rest of the house, the mirror's surface is strangely clean. "Look at this mirror," Emily calls out. Sarah touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but it feels out of place." Michael frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Michael and Sarah fall asleep quickly, but Emily struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Emily runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Michael, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Emily. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the manor. They discover that it was owned by Michael's great-uncle, a reclusive man with a dark interest in the occult. Sarah reads from an old newspaper. "Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Manor believed to be haunted." Michael sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Emily, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the manor, Michael discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large locked chest. Sarah examines a book. "He was into dark stuff. This can't be good." Michael tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Emily points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emily is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching them. "We have to leave now," Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Michael grabs an old book from the study. This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual. Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Michael reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emily hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Michael!" Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, Michael completes the incantation, and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the manor feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Sarah says, looking back at the manor. Michael nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the manor behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the manor. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Emily turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
The sun was setting as Emily, a young journalist, arrived at Ravenswood Manor. She had heard rumors of the haunted mansion and wanted to investigate for her next big story. The old, decaying building stood at the edge of the town, surrounded by overgrown trees. As she approached the iron gates, a sense of dread washed over her. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered the floor and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected interior. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she walked down the main hallway. In the dim light, Emily noticed portraits lining the walls. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her every move, making her uneasy. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper, like someone calling her name. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Her heart began to race. Emily entered the music room, where an old piano stood covered in dust. As she approached, she heard a soft, haunting melody. The keys were moving on their own, playing a melancholic tune. The room grew colder, and Emily felt an unseen presence watching her. In the library, Emily found a hidden door behind a bookcase. Inside, she discovered a small room filled with strange artifacts and an old leather-bound journal. She opened the journal and read about dark rituals and a curse placed on the mansion. The final entry warned of a vengeful spirit trapped within the house. As Emily read the journal, the temperature dropped sharply. She heard footsteps approaching and saw a shadowy figure materialize in the doorway. The figure was a ghostly woman with a twisted expression of rage. She pointed at Emily, her voice echoing with anger. "You must leave this place!" Emily's survival instincts kicked in, and she bolted from the hidden room. She raced through the dark hallways, the spirit's angry screams echoing behind her. She reached the front door and flung it open, escaping into the night. Gasping for breath, she looked back to see the mansion standing silent and still, but she knew she had been lucky to escape with her life. Safe at home, Emily reviewed her notes and the footage she had captured. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the mansion's dark history and the vengeful spirit. As she finished, she felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper, "Thank you." She knew the spirits had found some peace.
On the outskirts of town lies a dense forest, shrouded in mystery and fear. Four friends, Alex, Sarah, Mark, and Jessica, venture into the woods, despite warnings of its haunted past. As they step into the darkness, eerie whispers seem to echo through the trees. Deep within the woods, they stumble upon an abandoned cabin, its windows boarded up and doors creaking in the wind. Against their better judgment, they enter, drawn by an inexplicable force. Inside, the air is heavy with the weight of forgotten secrets. Within the cabin, they find decaying furniture and cobwebs clinging to every corner. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the floorboards creak underfoot. Suddenly, they hear a faint whisper, chilling them to the bone. As they explore further, a sense of unease washes over them. Shadows dance in the corners of their vision, and the temperature drops. Then, they catch a glimpse of a spectral figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing with otherworldly light. Panic sets in as the ghostly figure approaches, its presence growing more ominous by the second. With hearts pounding, the friends flee the cabin, running blindly through the dark forest. Behind them, they hear the echoing laughter of the spirits that inhabit the woods. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the woods, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to return to the forbidden woods, haunted by the echoes of their harrowing encounter.
The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching.
Ravenwood Manor had always been shrouded in mystery and fear. On a cold, misty evening, Alex, a young journalist with a thirst for the unknown, arrived at the manor. The gates were rusty and covered in ivy, and as Alex pushed them open, they creaked ominously. The mansion loomed in the distance, its dark windows staring back like lifeless eyes. Alex pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Dust-covered chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay draped in white sheets. His footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as he ventured deeper inside. As Alex explored the mansion, he felt a sudden chill. Turning around, he saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving his heart racing. Determined to find answers, he made his way to the library, hoping to uncover the mansion's dark past. In the library, Alex found rows of dusty old books. As he searched through them, he heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Ravenwood. The entries spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Alex's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught his attention. In it, he he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Alex reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Alex discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. He found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Ravenwood. As Alex read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Ravenwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Alex and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Alex knew he had to leave immediately. Alex bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Alex reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article, revealing the dark history of Ravenwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Lord Ravenwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Alex knew the haunting was far from over. On a dark, stormy night, 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Eva, walk down a desolate street. They come across an old, dilapidated house at the end of the road. The house is known among locals as the last house on the street and is rumored to be haunted. Despite their fear, curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore the house. The door creaks loudly as they push it open, revealing a dusty, abandoned interior. They enter the living room, which is filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror on the wall. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, and they hear faint whispering. The whispering leads them to a hidden door behind the stairs, which opens to a dark basement. Hesitant but determined, they descend the creaky steps, the air growing colder with each step. In the basement, they find an old chest. When they open it, they discover ancient cursed artifacts and a diary. The diary tells the story of a family that disappeared mysteriously, and it warns of a malevolent spirit trapped in the house. As they read the diary, the temperature drops, and a chilling presence fills the room. Shadows begin to move on their own, and the friends see a ghostly figure emerging from the darkness. Realizing they need to escape, they run back up the stairs. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. They finally break free and run out into the stormy night, vowing never to return. Back in the safety of their homes, they sit together, shaken but relieved. They know they will never forget the night they encountered the haunted house at the end of the street. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Ravenwood Manor from her estranged uncle. She decides to visit the house, hoping it will be a quiet place to write her novel. As she arrives, she feels an unsettling chill in the air. The house, surrounded by dark woods, looks like it hasn't been touched in years. Vines creep up the stone walls, and the windows are dark and foreboding. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway and the faint sound of whispers. When she investigates, she finds nothing but darkness and silence. She returns to bed, feeling uneasy. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the basement. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old, rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large, ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her uncle and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw as Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's uncle. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Ravenwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning.
Blackwood House stood isolated in the dense forest. Its windows were broken and the walls were cracked. As dusk set in, the sky turned an eerie orange and purple, casting a sinister glow on the decaying structure. Inside the house, the foyer was dark and filled with dust and cobwebs. An old creaky staircase led up to the second floor, and a broken chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals missing or shattered. The living room was filled with tattered furniture and a cold fireplace. A broken window let in a sliver of moonlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and the thick layer of dust that covered everything. The kitchen was a mess of broken cabinets and rusty appliances. A large wooden table in the center was covered in dust and cobwebs, and an old broken stove stood in the corner, untouched for years. The dining room featured a long table with an old tattered tablecloth. The chairs were scattered and overturned, and a single dusty candle sat at the center of the table, unlit and forgotten. The hallway was long and dark, with old creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper. Closed doors lined the hallway, each marked with a different ominous symbol, hinting at the secrets hidden within. The bedroom was dusty and old, with a large canopy bed covered in cobwebs. The curtains were tattered, and moonlight streamed in through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The attic was filled with old, forgotten items covered in dust and cobwebs. A single small window let in a beam of moonlight, illuminating strange old toys scattered on the floor. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sense of dread was palpable, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets. As dawn broke, Blackwood House was bathed in a soft golden light. The forest around it remained dark, but the first rays of the sun illuminated the decaying structure. The night's terror faded, but the house's haunting presence remained, a testament to its cursed history. In a tranquil forest clearing, the dying light of day casts long shadows over the lush greenery. At the center of the clearing looms a rustic cabin, its weathered facade hinting at secrets hidden within. Inside the cabin, the living room is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the feeble glow of a single lamp. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, and worn-out furniture sits silent and still. Dust dances in the air, stirred by an unseen presence that lingers in the shadows. Outside, the forest clearing is bathed in the ethereal glow of moonlight, casting a haunting pall over the landscape. Ominous clouds gather overhead, and the trees sway in the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows that seem to dance in the darkness. In the kitchen, neglect hangs heavy in the air, with peeling paint and cobwebs clinging to every surface. Moonlight filters through grimy windows, casting twisted shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the dusty countertops and rusted appliances. Along a winding forest path, darkness reigns supreme, with gnarled trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path disappears into the blackness, its destination unknown and foreboding, daring any who venture forth to tread carefully. In the bedroom, the air is musty and thick with the scent of decay. A creaky bed sits silent and still, its threadbare curtains fluttering in the breeze. Moonlight filters through cracks in the walls, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards like specters in the night. As night falls, a raging storm descends upon the forest clearing, with lightning illuminating the sky in blinding flashes and thunder rumbling like the roar of a distant beast. The wind howls through the trees, whipping up leaves and debris in a frenzied dance of chaos and despair. Deep within the bowels of the cabin lies the basement, a dark and foreboding chamber filled with crumbling walls and rusty pipes. Moonlight filters weakly through a small window, casting a feeble glow over the mold-covered floor, illuminating the dank and musty air with its eerie light. As dawn breaks, the forest clearing is bathed in the soft light of a new day, with birds chirping and dew glistening on the leaves like scattered diamonds. The storm has passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and renewal that belies the horrors that lurk within the haunted cabin. In the cabin's living room, morning sunlight streams through the windows, banishing the shadows and illuminating the space with its warm embrace. Dust motes dance lazily in the air, and the oppressive atmosphere of the night has lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity that signals the dawn of a new day.
Emma, a writer in her early 30s, moves into an old Victorian house in Willow Creek. She hopes the secluded house will help her overcome her writer's block. As she steps into the house, the air feels heavy, and she hears faint whispers echoing through the empty rooms. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway, but when she checks, there's no one there. Her unease grows, but she convinces herself it's just the house settling. While exploring the attic, Emma finds an old diary belonging to a girl named Lily. The diary speaks of strange occurrences and a tragic story of how Lily disappeared without a trace. Emma feels a chill run down her spine as she reads the last unfinished entry. The following night, the whispers return, clearer and more urgent. Shadows flicker and move on their own. Emma sees a ghostly figure of a young girl in the hallway, who vanishes as soon as she approaches. Fear takes hold of her. Terrified, Emma reaches out to the town's historian, Mr. Thompson. He tells her about the legend of Lily, a girl who disappeared many years ago. The house has a history of hauntings, and no one has lived there for long. Emma realizes she must uncover the truth to find peace. Determined, Emma performs a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. As she calls out, the room grows cold, and the ghostly figure of Lily appears. Lily reveals she was murdered, and begs for Emma's help to find her remains and put her to rest. Following Lily's clues, Emma discovers a hidden cellar beneath the house. There she finds Lily's remains and a locket with her name. Emma feels a mix of horror and relief, knowing she can finally help Lily find peace. Emma arranges a proper burial for Lily. As she places the locket in Lily's grave, a sense of calm envelops the area. The whispers cease and the house feels lighter. Emma feels a deep sense of closure and knows she has done the right thing. With the haunting over, Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. The house no longer feels oppressive. Instead, it's filled with a comforting, serene atmosphere. Emma sits by the window looking out at the sunny landscape, ready to start a new chapter in her life.
Blackwood Manor, a decrepit Victorian mansion, looms ominously amidst the dense forest. Boarded-up windows and crumbling facades tell tales of neglect and decay. The moon's pale light casts an eerie glow upon the scene, setting the stage for the horrors that lie within. The once manicured grounds of Blackwood Manor now lie in disarray, overrun by tangled bushes and fallen leaves. A thick fog rolls in from the surrounding forest, blanketing the landscape in an eerie haze, obscuring whatever secrets may be hidden within. The iron gates of Blackwood Manor, once grand and imposing, now stand tall and rusted, barely visible through the overgrowth that surrounds them. A chill wind howls through the trees, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that seems to seep into the very bones of those who dare to approach. Within Blackwood Manor, the foyer is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by flickering candlelight that casts long shadows upon the faded wallpaper. Dust dances in the air, stirred by a silence so palpable it feels almost suffocating, as if the very walls are holding their breath. In the dining room of Blackwood Manor, a long table is set with decaying remnants of a feast long past. Cobwebs hang from the ornate chandelier above, their delicate threads swaying in the stagnant air. The scent of decay hangs heavy, a grim reminder of the mansion's forgotten glory days. Within Blackwood Manor's library, dusty shelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet. The air is thick with the smell of aging paper and the secrets contained within the ancient tomes that line the walls. In the ballroom of Blackwood Manor, a grand chandelier hangs from the ceiling, its once glistening crystals now dull and lifeless. Moonlight filters through broken windows, casting eerie shadows upon the cracked dance floor. The room echoes with the ghostly laughter of revelries long past, a haunting reminder of the mansion's former glory. Within the study of Blackwood Manor, dusty books and forgotten artifacts clutter every available surface. A single candle flickers on the desk, its feeble light casting eerie shadows upon the walls. Ghostly figures seem to dance in the darkness, their presence felt but never seen, adding to the sense of unease that permeates the room. In the bedroom of Blackwood Manor, a canopy bed stands like a relic of a bygone era, its once luxurious linens now covered in dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper. The room is frozen in time, a silent witness to the horrors that haunt its halls. As dawn breaks over Blackwood Manor, the backyard is bathed in the soft light of a new day. The full extent of its decay is revealed in the morning light, as mist rises from the damp earth, shrouding the crumbling structures in an ethereal glow. The horrors of the night retreat with the darkness, but the memory of their presence lingers like a shadow upon the land.
Clara arrived at Ashwood House, an eerie, dilapidated mansion she had inherited from her aunt. The mansion stood on a hill, surrounded by dense, dark woods. The air was thick with fog, and the only sound was the distant hooting of an owl. As Clara walked up the creaky wooden steps, the front door slowly swung open on its own. Clara stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty hallway. Dust covered the floors, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The walls were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors. She felt a sudden chill as she closed the door behind her, the silence inside the mansion almost deafening. Clara moved into the living room, where old, tattered furniture was draped in white sheets. An antique piano sat in one corner, its keys yellowed with age. As she walked past, she heard a single note play, sending shivers down her spine. She turned quickly, but no one was there. In the dining room, Clara found a large portrait of her Aunt Margaret above the fireplace. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow her every move. As she stared at the painting, she heard faint whispering, as if someone was trying to communicate with her. She felt a cold breeze brush past her. In the library, Clara discovered an old, leather-bound diary hidden behind a row of books. The diary belonged to her aunt and detailed strange occurrences and eerie experiences in the house. As she read, the room grew colder, and she felt as if someone was watching her. Behind a bookshelf, Clara found a hidden door leading to a narrow, spiral staircase. She hesitated, but felt compelled to explore. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. The air grew colder and more oppressive with every step. The basement was damp and filled with old, dusty furniture covered in sheets. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table with a black candle, which suddenly lit itself. Clara felt a sense of dread as she approached the table. Clara's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Leave this place," the ghostly figure whispered. Panic-stricken, Clara ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with doors slamming and shadows moving. She burst through the front door into the night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, vowing never to return to Ashwood House. Breathing heavily, Clara glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
A group of friends, Alex, Maya, Ben, and Emma, arrive at the secluded Willow Lake for a weekend camping trip. The sun dips below the horizon as they set up their tents on the shore, the water reflecting the fading light. Excitement fills the air as they gather around a crackling campfire, swapping stories and laughter. As night falls, a thick fog rolls in from the lake, shrouding the campsite in an eerie haze. The friends exchange uneasy glances as the temperature drops, the crackling of the campfire the only sound breaking the silence. Shadows dance in the mist and strange shapes move just beyond the edge of their vision. As the night wears on, the friends begin to notice strange occurrences around the campsite. Personal belongings go missing, only to reappear in odd places moments later. The tent flaps flutter open and shut of their own accord, and eerie whispers float on the breeze. Tension mounts as they realize they are not alone in the darkness. Suddenly, a figure materializes out of the fog, a spectral apparition with hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. The friends recoil in horror as it reaches out towards them, its form shifting and wavering in the mist. Frozen with fear, they watch as it drifts closer, its unearthly wails echoing in the night. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends scramble to pack up their belongings and flee from the campsite. They race through the fog-shrouded forest, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Branches claw at their skin, and roots trip them up as they push themselves to their limits, desperate to escape the grasp of the malevolent spirit. Exhausted and out of breath, the friends finally emerge from the forest and into the safety of the open meadow. They collapse on the grass, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. As they catch their breath, they exchange relieved glances, grateful to have survived the night. But as they look back at Willow Lake, they can't shake the feeling that they have awakened something ancient and malevolent that will continue to haunt the wilderness for years to come.
Lucy and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian-style house they bought at a bargain price. The house is large and filled with antique furniture. As they unpack, Lucy finds a covered portrait in the attic. She pulls off the cloth, revealing a beautiful woman with haunting eyes. She decides to hang it in the living room.
That night, Lucy wakes up to strange noises, soft whispers and the sound of footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks at the portrait, the eyes seem to follow her. She feels a chill but convinces herself it's just her imagination. The next day, Lucy hears whispers coming from the living room. She finds Mark staring at the portrait, mesmerized. When she touches his shoulder, he snaps out of it, claiming he heard the woman in the portrait whispering his name. Lucy starts to feel uneasy about the painting. Determined to understand the painting's origins, Lucy visits the local library. She discovers that the woman in the portrait is Isabella, a former owner of the house who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It's rumored that her spirit haunts the house. That night, the whispers grow louder, and Lucy sees a shadowy figure moving through the house. The air grows cold, and the portrait seems to come alive, the woman's expression changing to one of anger. Lucy feels a strong, malevolent presence. Lucy and Mark contact a paranormal investigator. The investigator explains that Isabella's spirit is trapped and angry. He suggests they find something that belonged to Isabella and use it to perform a ritual to release her spirit. Lucy searches the attic and finds an old diary belonging to Isabella. The diary details her life and the love she lost. It also mentions a locket that she cherished. Lucy finds the locket hidden in a secret compartment in the attic. Lucy and Mark, guided by the paranormal investigator, perform the ritual using the locket. As they chant, the house shakes, and Isabella's ghostly figure appears. She looks sad, but grateful. She reaches out, touches the locket, and then fades away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Isabella's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Lucy and Mark decide to stay and cherish the history of the house. They hang the locket in a special place to remember Isabella. Months later, Lucy and Mark enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Isabella and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The house is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way.
Briarwood Manor stood silent and foreboding at the end of a long, winding road. Jane, a young historian, arrived just as the sun was setting. She had heard stories about the mansion's dark past and was determined to uncover the truth. As she approached the front door, the wind howled and the trees whispered ominously. Jane pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. The interior was dark and filled with the smell of dust and decay. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. The once beautiful chandeliers hung broken, and the walls were lined with tattered wallpaper. In the main hallway, Jane's flashlight beam fell on a large portrait of a stern-looking man. The eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She felt a shiver run down her spine. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the hallway, and the portrait's expression changed to one of anger. Jane discovered a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed it open to find a small, secret room. The room was filled with old, dusty books and strange artifacts. In the center of the room was a table with a large, leather-bound journal. She opened it and began to read. The journal belonged to William Briarwood, the original owner of the manor. It detailed dark rituals and a pact with a malevolent spirit to gain wealth and power. The final entry mentioned a curse that would doom anyone who lived in the house. Jane realized the manor was haunted by the spirits of those sacrificed in the rituals. As Jane read the journal, she heard whispers around her. Ghostly figures of the sacrificed appeared, their faces twisted in agony. They warned her to leave before it was too late. The temperature in the room dropped, and Jane could see her breath. She knew she had to get out. Rushing to leave, Jane encountered the malevolent spirit of William Briarwood himself. He appeared at the top of the grand staircase, his eyes glowing with an evil light. He blocked her path, his voice echoing through the manor, threatening her for disturbing his peace. Jane ran through the dark hallways, the spirit close behind her. She burst through the front door and into the night. The manor seemed to sigh as she left, the wind howling around her. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. As she drove away, she could still feel the spirit's eyes on her. Safe in her apartment, Jane reviewed the footage she had captured. The images of the spirits and the journal entries were clear evidence of the haunting. She knew she had to share the story, but a part of her feared the curse might follow her. She felt a cold draft and shivered, wondering if she was truly safe.
A car rumbles down a winding road, disappearing into the dense forest. Inside, a group of friends chats nervously, excitement tinged with apprehension evident in their voices. They've heard the stories about Willow Grove, an abandoned village rumored to be haunted, but they've come seeking adventure. As they approach the outskirts of the village, a shroud of mist descends, cloaking the world in an eerie haze. The friends step out of the car and into Willow Grove, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The village appears frozen in time, its buildings crumbling and overgrown with ivy. Windows are shattered, doors hang off their hinges, and the air is heavy with the scent of decay. Despite the desolation, a sense of unease settles over the group as they venture further into the heart of the village. At the edge of the village stands a grand mansion, a relic of a bygone era, its windows boarded up and its once grand facade crumbling. The friends exchange nervous glances as they approach, their curiosity outweighing their fear. With trembling hands, they push open the creaking door and step inside, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the friends explore the mansion, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them, a sense of malevolence that seems to seep from the very walls. They hear whispers in the darkness and catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes. Fear grips them tight as they realize they're not alone in the house. As the night wears on, the friends uncover clues about the mansion's dark past. A family torn apart by tragedy, their spirits trapped within the walls for eternity. They find old photographs and newspaper clippings, piecing together the story of the family's demise. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night progresses, the mansion comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, objects move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appear in the darkness. The friends huddle together, their screams echoing through the empty halls as they realize they're trapped in a nightmare from which there's no escape. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends make a final stand against the evil that haunts the mansion. Armed with makeshift weapons and fierce determination, they confront the ghostly apparitions that roam the halls, knowing that their survival depends on their ability to banish the darkness that lurks within. As dawn breaks, the paranormal activity subsides, and the mansion falls silent once more. The friends emerge from the darkness, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them. In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. "But it's an incredible find. There must be another way." Alex shook his head. "The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in." Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. "It has to," Alex replied, lighting the candles. "We don't have any other choice." Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. "Let's do this." As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. "Keep chanting!" Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. "Is it over?" Emily asked. "I think so," Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. "Thank you, Alex," she said, watching the flames. "We did it together," Alex replied. "Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again." In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked. "Better," Emily said with a smile. "I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over. On a chilly autumn night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Ravenswood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night inside to prove their bravery. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped into the foyer. The air was musty, and the only light came from their flashlights. Dust-covered furniture and cobwebs filled the room, adding to the eerie atmosphere. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner, and an old tattered sofa sat under a large broken window. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making everyone jump. They cautiously climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint, eerie whispers. They opened one door and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Ravenswood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again.